You are not your past. You are not your thoughts. You are the consciousness that observes them, and that awareness is the key to everything. In the next few minutes, you'll discover how awareness and elevated emotion can rewire your brain, reshape your energy, and open the door to the life you've always imagined. This is not motivation. This is the science of transformation, the art of becoming limitless. So take a breath, let go of the known, and step into the unknown field of infinite potential where your future is already waiting for you to remember it. There comes a moment in every life when the walls we thought defined us begin to feel too small, when the old stories, the familiar emotions, and the daily patterns can no longer contain the vast potential whispering inside us. And in that moment, when we dare to look beyond what we've known, we stand at the threshold of something extraordinary, the science of becoming limitless. The bridge between science and spirituality is the missing link in understanding how human beings can transcend limitation and create new realities. For centuries, science and spirituality stood apart, one measuring what can be seen, the other feeling what cannot be proven. Yet now, modern discoveries in neuroscience, quantum physics, and epigenetics are beginning to confirm what ancient wisdom always suggested, that our thoughts, emotions, and energy are not just internal experiences but active forces shaping the world around us. When we begin to understand that our internal state of being interacts with the external world, we realize that consciousness is not a passive observer, it is a creative participant in the unfolding of reality. The brain is not fixed, nor are we prisoners of our genes or our past, rather, we are biological expressions of our energy, constantly transforming based on where we place our attention and how we feel. When science meets spirituality, the mysterious becomes measurable. The electromagnetic field produced by the heart, for example, extends far beyond the body and changes according to our emotions. Feelings of love, gratitude, and joy generate a coherent field, an organized pattern of energy, that influences not only our biology but also the environment around us. Conversely, fear, anger, or doubt create dissonance and disorder, both within the body and beyond it. This demonstrates a simple yet profound truth: our inner world and outer world are entangled. The moment we alter the signal we are broadcasting through thought and emotion, the mirror of reality begins to shift in response. This is where spirituality becomes tangible, when meditation, intention, and elevated emotion are no longer abstract ideas but scientifically observable processes that transform matter itself. Neuroscience further reveals that every time we think a thought, we create a chemical reaction in the brain, which the body then experiences as emotion. Over time, these repetitive thought-emotion cycles become deeply wired patterns, forming our personality and defining our personal reality. But the same mechanism that traps us in familiar experiences can also liberate us. By consciously directing thought and emotion, by focusing energy and awareness on new possibilities, we activate new neural circuits and begin to recondition both brain and body toward a future that has not yet happened. In this way, spirituality, the art of inner alignment, finds its scientific foundation in neuroplasticity and energetic coherence. The field of quantum physics adds an even deeper layer, showing that particles exist as potential until observed, meaning that consciousness itself plays a role in determining outcomes. This suggests that the invisible realm of energy, intention, and emotion is not separate from the physical world but rather the blueprint behind it. When a person becomes aware that their focus, their frequency, and their feelings influence this field, they stop living as victims of circumstance and start participating as conscious creators. Science is now validating what spirituality has long declared, that reality is fluid, responsive, and deeply connected to the observer's state of being. When these two worlds merge, immeasurable science and experimental spirituality, the boundaries of possibility begin to dissolve, and the process of becoming limitless begins to take form within the very fabric of who we are. The human brain and heart are far more powerful than most people realize, holding within them the potential to transform not only our internal state but also the world we experience. The brain is a living map of everything we've learned, felt, and become, while the heart is the energetic center that communicates with every cell of the body in a language beyond words. When these two systems operate in harmony, they generate a frequency of coherence, a state where thought and emotion, mind and body, intention and energy are aligned. This coherence becomes the foundation for personal transformation because it allows us to move beyond chaos, stress, and old conditioning into a state of creation and elevated awareness. The power to change reality begins when the mind and heart begin to speak the same language, when thought is fused with elevated emotion, and when that emotion becomes the signal that instructs new possibilities into existence. The brain, through the process of neuroplasticity, can rewire itself to match any experience we consciously choose to focus on. Every thought we think sends an electrical signal through neural circuits, and the more we repeat that thought, the stronger the network becomes. This is how habits, personalities, and beliefs are formed, not as fixed traits, but as repeated patterns of energy and chemistry. When we think greater than our environment, greater than our body, and greater than time, we begin to create new neural maps that no longer reflect who we were, but who we are becoming. However, thought alone is not enough to transform our lives. The brain may conceive an idea, but it is the heart that gives it power. Emotion turns thought into energy, transforming a mental concept into a magnetic signal that can influence the field around us. The heart produces the largest electromagnetic field of any organ in the body, extending several feet beyond the skin. This field is measurable and responds instantly to emotional shifts. When we feel gratitude, compassion, or love, the heart's rhythm becomes ordered and balanced, sending coherent signals to the brain that enhance clarity, creativity, and intuition. When the brain receives this organized feedback, it begins to operate in greater harmony, leading to expanded awareness and the ability to access new possibilities. This biological and energetic synchronization between brain and heart creates a powerful channel for transformation because it mirrors the natural order of the universe itself, an intelligent coherence that organizes all matter and energy. Through the conscious practice of aligning the brain and heart, we begin to access a deeper level of intelligence that transcends logic. We tap into the intuitive field of knowing where inspiration flows effortlessly, where the body heals more efficiently, and where opportunities begin to align in mysterious yet meaningful ways. This is not magic but measurable energy in motion. When the brain and heart are unified through elevated emotion and focused intention, they become the instruments through which the infinite expresses itself. The power to create, to transform, and to transcend limitation lies within this harmony. It is through the merging of intellect and emotion, of thought and feeling, that we awaken the extraordinary capacity to shape our reality consciously. Neuroplasticity is one of the most profound discoveries in modern science, revealing that the human brain is not a static structure but a dynamic, ever-changing network capable of transformation throughout life. For centuries, it was believed that the brain's wiring was fixed after childhood, that we were bound to the habits, emotions, and patterns we developed early on. But research has shown that the brain is malleable. It reorganizes itself in response to our thoughts, experiences, and intentions. Every time we think, feel, or act, we create new neural connections, strengthening certain pathways while weakening others. This means that the mind has the power to literally change the structure and function of the brain. What we repeatedly focus on becomes our reality because attention is the architect of neural architecture. By choosing new thoughts, practicing new emotions, and envisioning new outcomes, we begin to train the brain to think and feel in alignment with a future we desire rather than a past we have already lived. Every thought we think produces a chemical reaction in the brain, and that chemical signal becomes the foundation of emotion. When we repeatedly think the same thoughts and feel the same emotions, the brain becomes hardwired into a specific pattern that reflects our history. This is why people often feel trapped by the past. Their brain and body have memorized it so deeply that it becomes their default state of being. But the principle of neuroplasticity gives us the power to break that cycle. When we consciously choose to think differently, we interrupt the old circuits and begin building new ones. If this process is repeated with focus and consistency, the new neural pathways grow stronger, eventually becoming the brain's new operating pattern. The old self, anchored in limitation and familiarity, gradually dissolves as a new self, defined by possibility, emerges from within. Visualization, meditation, and intentional focus are powerful tools for activating neuroplasticity. When we imagine a new reality vividly enough, the brain does not distinguish between what is real and what is imagined. It fires the same circuits as if the experience were already happening. This means we can literally rehearse our future into existence, programming the brain to expect and recognize new outcomes. Over time, the new neural networks begin to dominate, and the body starts to follow the mind rather than the past. The process requires consistency, emotional engagement, and belief, because emotion acts as the glue that stabilizes the new patterns. The stronger the emotional charge connected to a new thought or vision, the faster the brain records it as truth. Neuroplasticity is not only the science of brain change, it is the science of personal freedom. It shows that we are not victims of our past conditioning but creators of our future experience. Every time we choose awareness over reaction, intention over habit, and creation over memory, we are literally sculpting a new brain capable of perceiving greater realities. In this way, change becomes not just a psychological idea but a biological fact. The mind becomes the sculptor, the brain the clay, and through conscious repetition and emotional intensity, we carve the architecture of a limitless self. Emotions are the anchors that bind us to the past, holding our mind and body in patterns that limit our ability to create new realities. Every experience we have leaves behind a trace of emotion, joy, fear, anger, love, disappointment, and over time these emotions become chemically stored memories within the body. When something triggers us in the present, we are often not reacting to the moment itself but to a familiar emotional signature encoded long ago. This emotional memory keeps us cycling through the same thoughts, behaviors, and experiences because the body, conditioned by repetition, becomes addicted to the feelings of the past. It learns to crave what is familiar, even if that familiarity is painful or limiting. The mind may say it wants change, but the body resists, pulling us back toward the known because it equates emotional predictability with safety. This is why transformation often feels uncomfortable. It requires disrupting the biochemical relationship between who we were and who we are becoming. Every emotion carries a specific frequency and pattern of energy. Elevated emotions like gratitude, love, and joy expand our electromagnetic field and open us to greater levels of coherence and possibility. In contrast, lower emotions such as anger, fear, guilt, or resentment contract our energy and keep our focus anchored to survival. When we live in constant survival mode, our attention is fixated on the external world, scanning for threats, predicting outcomes, and reliving memories that reinforce our sense of separation and limitation. The body becomes a reflection of the past, and the future becomes a projection of what has already been. This loop of emotional addiction keeps our brain firing the same neural pathways, preventing the formation of new circuits that would allow us to experience something different. To break free, one must become conscious of the emotions that have become habitual and recognize that they are not an identity but a state. Awareness interrupts the automatic program, giving us the space to choose differently. When we stop identifying with emotions like unworthiness, anger, or anxiety, we stop feeding the circuits that sustain them. Through practices like meditation and mindful observation, we can teach the body to relax in the absence of familiar emotional feedback. As we withdraw energy from the emotions tied to the past, the neural networks associated with those memories begin to weaken. The chemical balance of the body shifts, and a new emotional baseline can emerge, one that supports creation rather than repetition. The process of emotional liberation is not about denying the past but transcending its hold. Every time we feel an old emotion and choose not to react, we reclaim energy that was once bound to that memory. That energy becomes available for creation, for imagining and feeling into new possibilities. This is the moment when transformation truly begins, when the body, no longer addicted to the past, starts to trust the unknown. In that openness, the heart can expand, the mind can quiet, and the frequency of who we are can begin to match the energy of the future we wish to experience. To free oneself from the predictable, known self and enter the unknown field of potential is to step beyond the boundaries of habit, identity, and memory into a realm of infinite creation. The known self is built from repetition, repeated thoughts, emotions, and behaviors that become a familiar pattern of existence. This predictable self lives within a closed loop, constantly recreating the same reality because it relies on what is certain and measurable. Every day is a reflection of yesterday, and the future becomes nothing more than an extension of the past. To live in the known is to live within the confines of what has already been experienced. But the moment we step into the unknown, we begin to access a space where infinite possibilities exist, a space beyond logic, beyond the senses, beyond the programs that define who we think we are. The human mind is wired to seek safety in familiarity. It finds comfort in predictability because it feels in control. Yet true creation does not happen within the known, it happens when we surrender that control and enter the uncertainty of the present moment. The unknown is the field of all potential, the invisible space where new realities are born. It is the domain of the quantum field, where energy has not yet taken form, and where intention, emotion, and awareness interact to bring new possibilities into existence. When a person detaches from the familiar self, the personality shaped by past experiences and emotional conditioning, they open themselves to a vast realm of creative intelligence that exists beyond the senses. This is not an act of imagination, it is a biological and energetic shift. The brain begins to rewire itself to reflect new patterns of thought, the body begins to feel new emotions, and the electromagnetic field of the heart begins to broadcast a new signal into the field of potential. Entering the unknown requires trust, because the mind's instinct is to cling to certainty. The moment you let go of the old story, the mind may feel lost, but that feeling of uncertainty is actually the sign of transformation. It means you are no longer reinforcing the neural and emotional patterns that sustained the old identity. The energy once bound to the past becomes available to create something new. In that moment, the conscious mind becomes the navigator of infinite potential rather than the servant of conditioned patterns. Every time we meditate, visualize, or practice presence, we are rehearsing the act of entering the unknown, training the brain and body to be comfortable in the field of uncertainty where creation happens. The unknown is not chaos, it is pure potential waiting for coherence. It responds to the frequency we bring to it. When we enter it with elevated emotion, love, gratitude, awe, or inspiration, we align our energy with the creative intelligence that animates all life. In that state, we become the bridge between thought and manifestation. To become limitless, one must learn to live there, to move beyond the predictable self and trust the intelligence of the unknown, where the future already exists as energy waiting to be called into form. The idea of quantum possibilities introduces a profound understanding of reality, that everything that can exist already exists as potential within an invisible field of energy. Quantum physics reveals that the material world is not as solid and fixed as it appears. Instead, it is composed of particles that exist in a state of pure potential until observed or measured. This means that reality is not a predetermined construct but an ever-changing field responding to the consciousness that interacts with it. Within this field, every possible version of your life already exists as energy, waiting for your attention, intention, and emotion to bring it into form. The thoughts you think, the emotions you feel, and the energy you project determine which potential you align with. This is not abstract mysticism, it is the science of how consciousness collapses possibilities into experience. When we live in alignment with the same thoughts and emotions every day, we keep tuning into the same energetic frequency, selecting the same version of reality over and over again. We replay the same relationships, attract the same outcomes, and feel the same emotions because our energetic signature remains unchanged. But when we begin to think greater than our environment, when we elevate our emotions beyond the familiar, we alter our frequency and begin to access new layers of potential within the quantum field. Every thought is an electrical signal, and every emotion is a magnetic field. Together, they create an electromagnetic imprint that interacts with the fabric of reality. Change the thought, change the emotion, and the field around you begins to rearrange itself in resonance with your new state of being. This is the essence of creation rather than reaction. Most people wait for external circumstances to change before they feel something new. They wait for success to feel worthy, for love to feel whole, for healing to feel gratitude. But the quantum model works in reverse. We must first generate the elevated emotion internally so that the frequency of our energy becomes a match for the future we wish to experience. The moment we do, the field begins to respond. Invisible forces align, coincidences appear, and opportunities manifest, not by chance, but by resonance. The outer world begins to mirror the coherence we cultivate within. Quantum possibilities remind us that reality is not limited by linear time. The future is not something that happens later, it exists now as a vibrational potential that can be accessed through intention and emotion. When the mind becomes clear, the heart coherent, and energy aligned, we begin to collapse the infinite into the tangible. We become participants in the creative process of the universe itself. The field of potential is neutral. It doesn't decide what manifests, it only mirrors what we broadcast. The question then becomes not whether infinite possibilities exist, but which one you are choosing to embody in this moment. The science of becoming limitless begins when you realize that you are not waiting for the field to change, you are the field, and it changes as you do. To move from survival mode into creation mode is to shift from a state of fear, stress, and reactivity into a state of openness, inspiration, and possibility. Most people live much of their lives trapped in survival mode, where the body and mind are constantly anticipating danger, predicting the future based on the past, and focusing on what could go wrong. This state activates the body's stress response, flooding it with chemicals like adrenaline and cortisol, which are designed to help us face immediate threats. While this reaction is essential for short-term survival, it becomes deeply harmful when sustained over long periods. The body cannot distinguish between a real threat and one imagined through thought. Every time we relive painful memories or worry about the future, we trigger the same physiological responses as if the danger were happening now. This keeps us locked in a cycle of fight, flight, or freeze, draining our energy and anchoring our awareness to the external world. In survival mode, our attention is narrowed. We focus on problems, on separation, on what is missing. Our sense of time becomes linear and limited, past, present, and future feel disconnected, and the mind operates on autopilot, repeating patterns that ensure predictability rather than growth. The energy available for creation is consumed by self-preservation. We think in the same way, feel the same emotions, and make the same choices because our brain and body are programmed for consistency. This repetitive loop gives us a sense of control, but it also prevents transformation. To move beyond this, we must learn to regulate the nervous system and step into a state where the body no longer believes it is in danger. Creation mode begins when we quiet the analytical mind and shift our awareness inward. It is the state where the present moment becomes more real than the memories of the past or the projections of the future. When we are truly present, the brain and body synchronize, and energy that was once used to survive becomes available for creation. In this state, the brain produces coherent waves, the heart emits a harmonious electromagnetic field, and the chemistry of stress gives way to the chemistry of healing and growth. Emotions like gratitude, love, and inspiration expand our energy field and bring the mind into resonance with the frequency of new possibilities. In creation mode, we are no longer reacting to life, we are designing it consciously. This shift requires trust in the unknown, because creation mode exists beyond logic and control. It invites us to replace anticipation of the worst with anticipation of the miraculous. Instead of focusing on lack, we focus on wholeness. Instead of being defined by what has happened, we begin to live as if the future we desire is already unfolding. The energy of creation is expansive and magnetic. It draws experiences, people, and opportunities that align with our elevated state. To live in creation mode is to recognize that our energy precedes our reality and that the universe responds not to our needs or fears, but to our vibration. When the body is freed from the chains of survival and the mind begins to dwell in the field of potential, the process of becoming limitless naturally begins to unfold. Metaphoric imagery serves as a powerful bridge between the conscious and subconscious mind, allowing abstract truths about transformation to be felt rather than merely understood. When we imagine awakening from a deep sleep, stepping beyond a horizon, or tuning into higher frequencies, we are not just using poetic language, we are communicating with the deepest parts of the self that understand change through symbols and sensation. The human mind is wired for imagery, it responds to pictures and metaphors with emotional intensity, and that emotion becomes the language through which new realities are impressed upon the brain and body. When we describe personal growth as awakening, it carries a profound implication, that the limitless potential we seek is not something to acquire but something to remember. It suggests that what limits us is not the absence of power but the forgetting of it, and that through awareness, we are simply opening our eyes to a truth that has always been within. To step beyond the horizon symbolizes moving past the boundaries of the known self, the comfort zone where life feels predictable but stagnant. The horizon is a line that seems to define where the earth ends and the sky begins, yet it only appears solid until you reach it. Every time you move toward it, it recedes, revealing more distance, more possibility, more unknown. This is the journey of expansion, the journey of consciousness exploring its own depth. The moment we take that symbolic step, we begin to dissolve the illusions of limitation that the mind has built around safety and familiarity. Beyond the horizon lies the field of pure potential, the place where creation begins, and stepping into it requires faith, the willingness to trust that something greater than the self is guiding the process. Tuning into higher frequencies represents another dimension of transformation. Every emotion, thought, and state of being emits a measurable frequency, and just as a radio can only play the station it is tuned to, we can only experience the reality that matches our energetic vibration. When we are tuned to fear, we perceive threat and lack. When we are tuned to gratitude and love, we perceive possibility and connection. Raising our frequency is not about escaping the human experience but about refining our awareness so that we can perceive the subtler, higher-order intelligence operating in all things. It is an act of alignment, not effort. Through meditation, intention, and emotional elevation, we shift our vibration and begin to harmonize with the frequencies of abundance, healing, and inspiration that are already present in the quantum field. These metaphors are not just linguistic tools, they are portals for the mind to access deeper states of consciousness. The subconscious mind does not distinguish between literal and symbolic experience. When we visualize awakening, expanding, or tuning in, we activate the same neural and emotional patterns as if those transformations were physically occurring. In this way, imagery becomes the architecture of inner evolution, guiding the conscious and subconscious mind to move together toward coherence. Transformation, then, becomes a process of remembering, expanding, and harmonizing with a frequency that was always ours to claim. Personal empowerment begins with the realization that we are not limited by our past, our environment, or even our biology. The traditional view of human potential has often been rooted in determinism, the belief that our lives are shaped by genetics, upbringing, and circumstance. Yet modern science has begun to reveal a very different truth, that our thoughts, emotions, and beliefs are powerful enough to influence the expression of our genes, the chemistry of our body, and the structure of our brain. This means that who we are is not fixed but fluid, capable of extraordinary transformation. We are no longer victims of biology but participants in a dynamic process of creation. When a person begins to understand this, they reclaim authority over their life and awaken to the awareness that they are the cause of their own experience rather than the effect of external conditions. Every cell in the body listens to the energy and emotion we broadcast. Our internal state, what we think and how we feel, sends constant signals through the nervous and endocrine systems, influencing the body's physiology. Thoughts of fear, worry, or resentment produce stress chemicals that weaken the immune system and reinforce neural patterns of limitation. But thoughts of gratitude, love, and joy create biochemistry that supports healing, regeneration, and coherence. This feedback loop means that the body is not a separate entity reacting to the world, it is a mirror of consciousness, responding to the energy we sustain within. When we shift our internal dialogue from doubt to belief, from powerlessness to purpose, the body begins to follow that new instruction. Over time, this alignment creates a new identity, one rooted in expansion rather than protection. Epigenetics, the study of how environment and consciousness influence gene expression, provides a scientific foundation for empowerment. It shows that genes can be turned on or off depending on signals from the environment, and since our thoughts and emotions form part of that environment, we become the architects of our biological destiny. This understanding dismantles the old narrative that we are trapped by inheritance or circumstance. Instead, it invites us to take responsibility for our energy, knowing that each elevated emotion and intentional thought sends a new message to the body, one that promotes vitality and transformation. Empowerment is no longer a motivational concept but a measurable state of being, one in which awareness and energy work together to create change at the deepest levels of existence. When we embrace this truth, we stop waiting for the external world to validate our worth. We no longer depend on success, relationships, or outcomes to define our sense of power. Instead, empowerment arises from within, from the recognition that reality responds to our state of being. As we cultivate coherence between mind and heart, we become magnetic to experiences that reflect our elevated vibration. The shift from victimhood to creation is the true liberation of consciousness, where personal freedom is no longer about changing the world outside but mastering the world within. In that mastery, the illusion of limitation dissolves, and what remains is the essence of infinite potential that has always been part of who we are. Awareness and elevated emotion are the two keys that unlock the process of transformation, for it is through conscious awareness that we begin to observe the self, and through elevated emotion that we begin to create beyond it. Awareness is the light of consciousness. It reveals the programs, beliefs, and emotional patterns that have been operating in the background of our mind and body. Most people live unconsciously, repeating thoughts and behaviors that were learned long ago, unaware that these patterns are continually shaping their perception of reality. The first step toward becoming limitless is to become aware of those automatic reactions, to witness them without judgment, and to recognize that the observer is not the same as the observed. The moment we observe a thought or emotion, we create space between who we truly are and the pattern itself, and in that space, transformation begins. Awareness interrupts the program. It brings the unconscious to the surface, where it can be redefined through choice. But awareness alone does not create change, it simply reveals where change is needed. Emotion is the energy that turns thought into experience. Elevated emotions such as gratitude, love, inspiration, and joy are not just feelings, they are frequencies that expand the electromagnetic field of the heart and signal the body to align with higher states of coherence. When awareness exposes the limitation and elevated emotion fills that space with new energy, the brain and body begin to reorganize themselves around a higher order of being. This is how consciousness evolves. Each time we generate elevated emotion independent of circumstances, we are teaching the body that it no longer needs to wait for the outer world to change in order to feel differently. We are reclaiming our creative power from the external and returning it to the internal. Elevated emotion is the language of the quantum field. It is through this energy that we communicate with the intelligence that shapes reality. When we combine the clear intention of the mind with the elevated emotion of the heart, we create a coherent signal that influences the field around us. The brain provides the blueprint, the heart provides the magnetic pull, and together they collapse potential into reality. This is why gratitude and love are so powerful. They carry the frequency of already having, not of wanting. When we feel gratitude for a future that has not yet occurred, the body experiences it as if it already has, and the quantum field begins to organize itself accordingly. The emotion becomes the evidence that the future is real, and this evidence sustains belief, which fuels manifestation. Transformation is therefore a dance between awareness and emotion, between observation and embodiment. The more aware we become of our old states of being, the more energy we free from the past. The more we generate elevated emotion, the more that liberated energy is redirected toward creation. In that balance, the conscious mind aligns with the intelligence of the heart, and the individual merges with the infinite. It is here, in this harmony of knowing and feeling, that the science of becoming limitless reveals its deepest truth, that the power to create reality lies within the frequency of our awareness and the emotion we choose to sustain.